with my buddy, Rob. You are just the man. I'm Gary Byron. People were talking about you.
Oh, really?
Yes. Hold on a second. Was it last week? Yes, it was last Saturday, the day before Mother's Day. I'm talking with I was talking with a couple of buddies of mine, and they were listening to my morning show during the week, and they just leave their preset. So they get in their car Saturday morning, and they turn on the car, and it's already on this station, and they start talking. They go, Rob Weinberg. Yeah, what about him? Like, wow, that guy is super knowledgeable. And I said, oh, you got to meet this guy in person because, he's on fire. He's got a podcast. He's all over and you Google his name. It's right up at the top of the list. Or Google, mortgage advisors, and Rob Weinberg is right up at the top, And they're like, they like the show. You got a real popular show going.
That's what I'm doing it for. So much appreciated. Well, got a special present for all our listeners today. I've been trying to get on this special guest here today for a while, and I'm really excited he's joining us.
Yeah.
It's attorney Keith Hathaway, one of the top real estate attorneys in the state of Connecticut, one of my personal strategic partners that I refer my clients to for help in the real estate process. So again, everyone, welcome Keith Hathaway.
Keith, welcome to the show. Glad to have you on. And when Rob Weinberg, when you get his seal of approval, I already know you've been vetted. Everything is fine. Look,
well, I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be here.
It's got high standards.
Quite frankly, now I feel that much better about myself. I didn't realize that was that much of a big deal.
All right.
Apparently you are. Why, though? Why are attorneys so important in the buying, selling, and refinancing process?
Well, honestly, because we're experts. We're experts at a particular area of business, happens to be law, and I always like to tell people that when you might be interested in cars, but if you have a problem and you're not too sure what to do, aren't you happy that you have an expert there that will probably be able to fix it much faster for you and avoid other issues?
Same thing with real estate, definitely. I think it's almost required, right? You have to have an attorney in Connecticut to buy, sell, or finance real estate.
You
right?
do. Around the entire country, there are some states that are what they call title states and some states that are attorney states. Most of the states in New England happen to be attorney states where you have to be an attorney in order to conduct a real estate transaction for another person.
Right. So what I'm finding is for those that are new to the real estate process that any attorney's office here in Connecticut, they're going to be going through the process with you from start to finish. So from the beginning, it's going to be like contract work on the purchase and sale agreement, reviewing that, making sure that everything's in the right spot to protect you as a buyer or seller. So that's very important. Then reviewing loan documents with you at the closing. And during the process, they're going to be facilitating typically the title search on the property, which is going to ensure that the home property that you're buying doesn't have legal issues with the title. There's not back taxes. There's not other old liens that haven't been discharged. Super, super important. And nobody thinks about it because if you've got a good real estate attorney, this all happens behind the scenes without you as a buyer or seller really even knowing, because they do what they do very, very smoothly in a good way. And unless there's a big issue, right, they're not even going to know.
If you don't hear from me, it's a good thing.
Is every real estate transaction, do they all utilize an attorney here in Connecticut? It's by law? Or
by law, Connecticut is an attorney state. In order to conduct a real estate closing, you have to be an attorney.
Okay. I see. Look at that. As Johnny would say, I did not know that. Now, is there a choice on whether someone can use a title company or attorney? And what are the advantages and disadvantages of each?
Well, it's interesting you say that. The distinction between title state and attorney state, we happen to be an attorney state. So in Connecticut, you're not supposed to use a title company. In other parts of the country, they will use a title company in order to facilitate the closing process and all the other things that go with it. But in Connecticut, you can't.
Differentiate then. I'm naive when it comes to this. What is a title company as opposed to, I know what an attorney is, but what is a title company?
A title company is just a company that does the exact same job as a real estate attorney would do here in Connecticut, but without a law license.
Oh.
So less regulated, I think,
Exactly.
right? And I'll tell you, when I started out, even as early as 6-7 years ago, Connecticut was not an attorney state. This is something that changed in the last 6-7 years.
It's tightened up a lot in the last.
What was the
7 years.
impetus there?
I think protection of consumers, making sure that they understood. The way that I've explained to my clients is that a lot of people have, they've gone through a closing and maybe they had a notary do the closing that didn't really know what they were doing, couldn't answer questions, didn't have the experience. And I think there was probably enough complaints or enough displeasure with people going to regulators in the state of Connecticut that they said, we need attorneys doing this. We need someone that's a pro, that's knowledgeable, that's an expert, that's experienced, that's got the license. So when a client asks at their closing, well, can you explain this promissory note to me? What does this paragraph mean? A notary has no clue. And that's who a title company is going to hire to do the closing as a notary. Whereas Keith's office or any real estate attorney, you have to have certain licensing. You have to have certain expertise. You have to go through testing. So I think that was the impetus to change Connecticut and really tighten up that you have to now have closings done.
It's actually a good thing.
If I can build on what he said, explaining the promissory note, very important. Do you want somebody without a legal education explaining a legal document? I wouldn't. I would rather have an attorney who actually went to law school to know what a promissory note, to know contract law, explain the document to me, rather than rely on some notary that's sitting there, doesn't even know what it says, just knows you're supposed to sign in a particular spot. So if the consumer wants to ask questions or has questions, a notary won't be able to handle it.
Okay. Can you discuss, though, that maybe the different types of attorney or even title-related fees or charges that one can expect when buying, selling, or even refinancing?
Absolutely. So number one on the list, of course, is attorney fee. Other than that, there'd be things like the cost of the title search, the cost that the town hall charges you to record documents on the land records after you close. Sometimes there's some smaller things like CPL fees and title insurance that also go along with it. So those would be the big ones. I could go into a lot more detail on title insurance and a lot more detail on attorney's fees and how they're calculated and what's normal, if you like.
Well, we'll talk about title insurance in a second, but I think something really important to point out is that the minute you say attorney, people go, oh, no, it's going to cost all this money.
Yes.
What I found is that, a couple things to address that. Number one, attorneys are not more expensive than title companies. So even though they may have different charges on the closing disclosure, one may say an attorney fee, the other may say a settlement fee, that sort of thing. At the end of the day, the attorney's not going to cost you more. So do not think just because there is an attorney, it's going to be more. Usually it's very comparable, okay? Number two thing is, I'll tout Keith's office here. One of the reasons I partner with them is because over all these years, with all this crazy inflation and everything going through the roof, they are the only firm that I know of that has stood strong and kept their settlement and attorney fee the exact same now as it was 5 years ago when I started doing business with them. That's unheard of in this market.
That's commendable.
All the other attorneys are charging thousands of dollars for what Keith's firm is doing a better job at, and if it's okay if I say, their attorney's fee is only $750. That is outstanding. That's phenomenal. I don't even know how they make money, but they do a great job, and I'm going to keep working with them because of that.
I appreciate it, and I'll tell you, the way that we do make money is we do high volume. All I do is closings all day, every day. All I've done is closings for the last 20 years. So as a result, you gain efficiency, and efficiency plus the volume means we get to make a profit.
$750.
Yep,
$750. That's it.
A couple of things I always like to tell people to be wary of also is if you run into an attorney that wants to do your closing for you and they charge hourly, run away now, because it's going to be $5,000.
Oh yeah,
oh yeah, yeah. It's going to get up there. And there's no such thing as an attorney doing a contingency fee for a closing, because that's like saying, oh, it might not close.
I was when you were talking about this a moment ago, I'm thinking to myself, there's the purchase of the house, but there's all these other fees that people don't think. A closing cost. Well, that's $10,000 approximately. Okay, attorney fees, and I was waiting to hear, I don't know, $2,500, $3,000. All these hidden fees that people just don't think of. They think of buying the house, and then your agent's going to get their 6% agency fee, and then there's and I'm like, these fees just add up.
It does.
So that's
but
refreshing to hear. Go
the
ahead.
thing I'll say is that a lot of attorneys, number one, if you just called a bunch of attorneys' offices in Connecticut and said, I need to do a closing, I'm refinancing, or I'm buying, what's your attorney fee? I don't think you'll find one cheaper than Keith's. Most of the ones I see in Connecticut are on average between $1,250 and $2,000. I've seen some that I feel are predatory, that take advantage of either naive homeowners that are refinancing or first-time buyers that don't know what they're doing. I've seen some attorneys on a $250,000 or $300,000 purchase charge $2,500 or $3,000 attorney fee. It's obscene. They're not doing a better job. I'll tell you, a lot of the time, the ones that charge that actually do worse. And the reason why they have to charge such a high fee is because they don't do high volume. So they have to gouge somebody to charge 2, 3, 4 times the market rate in order to stay in business. So that's one thing to be aware of. That's why working with a mortgage expert, a pro like myself, we can link you up with Keith's office, or depending on what state you're in, another office that can facilitate this, give you the best service and the lowest cost. The other thing before we go on, Gary, is junk fees. There's so many junk fees that attorneys charge. One of the reasons I love working with Keith's office is because they charge their $750, and that encompasses pretty much all of the costs that their office incurs in doing the title search and facilitating the closing. If you look at a closing statement from another office, I've seen, because I get linked up all the time with buyers that say, hey, I'm using my Uncle Joe. He's a real estate attorney. I'm using my cousin Mabel. She's been doing real estate law for 3 months. I really want to have her do my closing. And what we'll find is they're charging their attorney fee, which can be high, but also they're charging $50 for this, $80 wire fee, $60 rundown fee. And when you add it all up, it's hundreds and hundreds of extra dollars, sometimes thousands of extra dollars. That's a red flag. So I'm not saying everyone's bad doing that. I just want our listeners and viewers to really know that there's a better way. There's a cheaper way, and there's a way you can get great service and also have a low cost.
See, that's why this show is so important. I really, you are just informing me, you're informing the public on things that we had no idea of. Keith, why is title insurance so important? And maybe, I don't know, maybe you can just give some examples or something.
Title insurance is important for a variety of reasons. For the most part, when somebody's buying a home, it's normally going to be the largest investment they're ever going to make. Just on average, if you're lucky enough to buy a home, especially if you're lucky enough in this market. In the event that anything went wrong, or there were any mistakes or issues with the ownership of the property, or with the lot lines or something to that effect, it's going to be a big number. So that's why title insurance is so important. Rarely do issues ever come up in title, but when they do, they're big ticket items.
Does the cost, though, does the cost of title insurance, does it vary from, let's say, title company to title company, or are those costs just regulated by the state?
They're regulated by the state. From time to time, one title insurance company or another might ask the state, petition the state to charge a little bit more. Normally they say, we'd like to charge 5% more on our premiums. And almost always the state says yes. But then that becomes a competition problem between all the different title insurance companies, because if title insurance company A just jacked up their rates by 10% and title insurance company B keeps them 10% lower, then the people like myself who get to determine or highly recommend which title insurance company a consumer might use will have to explain, okay, this is why I think you should pay 10% more.
Well, what I wanted to say, too, is there are many different title insurance companies in Connecticut and throughout the country. So I want to say there's 5 or 6, right, that are available. One of the benefits of dealing with a high-volume firm versus a one-man show law firm when you're buying or selling or refinancing is that, like with Keith's office, they have all these providers to shop around to see who's going to get you that best deal, who's going to get you that low title insurance, quality policy with the coverage you need, but at a low cost. And me and Keith were talking before the show. We have a client right now that, they're paying $500 more than they need to be on their title insurance because they're dealing with a firm that doesn't have that ability, that scale to shop with multiple options. So they are tied into just CADIC, which is the main title insurer in Connecticut, and whatever the cost is, it is. But with a bigger office, you have options, you have scale. So you can save hundreds, sometimes even thousands of dollars in that title insurance cost for the same coverage. So it's same thing applies as like if you're buying life insurance, if you're buying a $100,000 policy, do you want to pay $30 a month or $80 a month? Same exact thing. It's a simple decision. And again, who you work with matters, as we always talk about. This is one of those situations where it's huge. One thing I wanted to ask you about, Keith, before we go on is, can you just give one example of one of those rare times where title insurance did come in handy? Because I've had buyers say, I don't want it.
That was going to be my next question as
All
well.
right. I can actually give you two.
Okay.
Two would be this: foreclosures and probate somewhere in the past.
Okay.
So, for example, one of the common things that we run into if a title issue comes up is perhaps, Aunt Junie thought that she owned the property and she's now selling it to somebody else. She's lived there for a while. She doesn't realize that she only owns half the property because in the probate that she thought she received the title on, somebody else wasn't involved in the probate and they still have a half interest in the property. So that's a common thing. Some attorney that did the probate might have made a mistake. Sometimes people try to do the probate on their own and they will make a mistake on it, and that might have been 30 years ago. So it'll come up later on that the mistake happened, and now the title insurance company that wrote the last policy now has to either cover the amount of money that it's going to cost or hire a lawyer to go fix it. And what they normally do is they go and they hire an attorney to go and litigate this and fix it, or there's some, tips and tricks that they can use with affidavits on the land records that will clean these things up, but somebody else is going to take care of that rather than the consumer, Aunt Junie that's now selling the property thinking she owns the whole thing, having to go hire a lawyer for $5,000 to go do it. Title insurance comes in, jumps in, and takes care of it for you. That's example number one. Example number two would probably be foreclosures. Now, when foreclosures happen, people of a certain age, my age in particular, might remember, 2008, 9, 10, and 11, when there was tons of foreclosures. Right. And when that happened, there was so many happening that you're doing thousands and thousands of foreclosures. Some of these bigger law firms, they're going to miss something here and there. They do a good job. They know what they're doing. They focus their practice on it, just like I focus on the closing part of it. But no matter what, if you're doing that high volume, or the court might make a mistake, they might make a mistake, and later on, 10 years later, the person who bought it out of foreclosure now wants to sell it, and they find out, oops, there's a boo-boo there, and who's going to fix it? Does the consumer who now owns the property want to hire a lawyer for $5,000, clean up the mess that somebody else made, or do they just want to say, hey, title insurance company, remember I gave you that premium? How about you take care of it?
Okay. Good points.
Wow. Man, again, these are things I never even thought of. And I'm going to tell you, they're going to get busy, these individuals, because you got foreclosures, I think, that are going to, another wave of foreclosures happening around the bend. That's the word I'm getting from real estate agents and here and there. Folks, you are listening to Mortgage Matters Radio Show and the Connecticut Real Estate Edge podcast, along with Rob Weinberg. I'm Gary Byron. You can contact Rob at 860-413-3938. Once again, 860-413-3938. You can check him out online at ConnecticutMortgageLending.com. Our guest is attorney Keith Hathaway. You can contact him as well, 203-288-1333. Again, 203-288-1333. You can email him at Keith, that's Keith, at gcghlaw.com. Keith, what would you say to someone who doesn't think that they need an attorney in a real estate transaction?
I'd say, if you think you don't need an attorney in a real estate closing, it's like saying you don't need a doctor to perform surgery. You could probably do it on yourself, but I wouldn't highly recommend it.
I would totally agree with that. I mean, I've had so many times where people question having an attorney or which attorney they're going to use. And I've dealt with some really bad ones over the years. And that's why I just value, Keith's office, the relationship we have, and others that I've worked with, that I can vet for my clients to say, this is somebody that's got the experience, got the knowledge, and can get this and take it home for you. So it's not even a question. You need an attorney. You need a good attorney. It's worth its weight in gold. Like, when you actually do run into an issue like he was talking about on the title insurance side or whatnot, to have a resource there to help you through the biggest financial transaction of your life. That's what it is for most people. a few $100s here or there, like it just makes such a big difference in your peace of mind, in your long term. We've had closings, I can tell you, from years ago where I'll have to go back a missing discharge or something. Keith's office can handle it like that. If you dealt with Aunt Mabel, who's only been doing real estate for 3 months, they might be out of business. And it's hard because I've had situations where someone closed, let's say, a refinance 5 years ago with a Joe Schmo law firm. Okay, now we need to go back and fix a mistake. They're out of business. They can't be found. They're not returning calls. Would it have been worth them paying maybe a little bit more or dealing with the recommendation from their lender or realtor versus trying to cut corners and that sort of thing? So do not even think about doing a real estate transaction in Connecticut or anywhere else without the advice of an attorney. You're just digging yourself a hole that you're not going to be wanting to get out of.
It's a no-brainer, particularly at $750. What are some of the big do's and don'ts that you see first-time home buyers make when they're buying their first property?
All right. First time don't is not to listen to your realtor or your mortgage lender.
Oops. Whoa.
No, I'm sorry. Let me correct this. First time don't is to not ignore them. Sorry, let me correct that.
That's okay.
To listen to them because they have your best interests at heart. And they're also trying to make this the smoothest transaction for you. So Rob says, hey, use this inspector or use this attorney or talk to this realtor if, let's just say they got to Rob first and need to find a realtor to find them a home. Listen to who he gives you because he just wants to get you through a process with the least amount of stress and also as quickly as possible with the least amount of hiccups and bumps and problems. So one of the worst things you could do is ignore them and go to your cousin's brother's uncle's friend who just got out of law school 2 days ago and wants to pretend like he knows what he's doing about doing a real estate closing. Don't do that.
Maybe talk about some, like special legal considerations for real estate investors who are building a portfolio, let's say.
Okay. One of the biggest things real estate investors talk about when they're building a portfolio is, do I own the property personally or do I own it in some sort of an LLC or corporation? Some even put them into a trust. So it is a good idea to do that. So the legal answer to that is yes, it's always a good idea to put your property into an LLC to protect it if anything happens on that property. You're in essence protecting all the other assets you might have. If you buy a 3-family rental property, somebody slips and falls on that, and you own it in your personal name, they can sue you personally, go after your house that your family lives in, and go after the property that they slipped and fell on. But if you own that inside of an LLC or a corporation or a trust, all they can touch is any money that's in that investment.
I will tell you, this is a very common strategy that almost all seasoned real estate investors use, even new ones that are starting up. Will get that LLC going like he's talking about and get that first property in there and then do another, etc. But I will tell you that every lender does have different guidelines with this, depending on the type of loan you're looking for and trying to get or have gotten. Like, there are special clauses in transferring from your name to an LLC, a trust. In certain cases, it can cause a due on sale type of scenario. There's special mortgage considerations. So before you actually do anything with moving properties out of your name into a trust, back and forth, LLC, etc., just talk to your lender about it. Make sure that you are doing the right thing for your loan type, or you may end up in an even worse predicament. So it's not only a legal consideration, but also there's lending involved and mortgages involved too, because that lender has a lien on the property, and if they see that it's moved in and out of names, they are going to usually have some questions and concerns. So if you can address that up front, it'll be fine. And Fannie Mae actually recently, in the last couple of years, changed the guidelines to make it more investor-friendly with this stuff.
I got one final question for you, Keith, if you don't mind.
No.
It's kind of a general question, but how is your firm different from all the other real estate attorneys in Connecticut? Other than, listen, you have a remarkable price. I know you're doing volume. You're very clear on that. But what differentiates your service?
Focus. We focus on doing closings. Me personally, this is all I do. All I do is closings all day, every day, a couple times a day. That's all I focus on. So if I use this example, and I'm going to go back to the doctor example, do you want somebody that got out of med school and, looked into brain surgery once, or do you want the guy that's been doing it for 20 years, 5 times a day, that's his entire career? I would rather have the guy that focuses on it.
You got to start somewhere, though.
Especially if they're similar price. I would even say it's worth paying a premium for that. But in Keith's case, and most of my partners, they're charging comparable or less than the competition. So it's really a huge competitive advantage. And I'll say, to toot their horn again, like, his paralegals are on the ball. They're responsive, they're quick, they're experienced, they know how to get stuff done. That's very, very rare this day and age with the market as crazy as it's been. Things fall through the cracks. Things can take longer than needed. They can spur into action when needed. If I ask for a rush or I need something done right away for a deadline, it happens. Whether it's the paralegal that's assigned or they get someone to step in if someone's out, it's like a well-oiled machine, and that's important.
I'm so running out of time, and I have an ending here. I've got to wrap the show up here. But in your experience, then, when you haven't worked with Keith and his firm, from your perspective, there's that much of a noticeable difference?
There's nightmares I go through every month. You got to realize that a lot of my buyers come with a recommendation for an attorney from their realtor or their family or whatnot. And by the time I'm involved, they already know who they're using as an attorney, or at least have a direction. So I have to go and work with. So I've worked with hundreds of law firms all over Connecticut and in other states too. And I can tell you, like, Keith's office is in the top 3 that I've ever worked with. So that's important. And there's such a big problem with other ones with communication, delays, just so many issues. When you find a good one, you want to latch on and you want to, continue that partnership.
I want to thank attorney Keith Hathaway for being with us this morning. You can contact Keith at 203-288-1333. Once again, 203-288-1333. And if you'd like to email him, you may do so at Keith, that's Keith, at gcghlaw.com. Again, it's Keith, Keith, at gcghlaw.com. Now, you can contact Rob Weinberg as well very easily at 860-413-3938. Again, 860-413-3938. Check him out online at ConnecticutMortgageLending.com. And you can email him at mortgagemattersradioshow@gmail.com. Once again, mortgagemattersradioshow@gmail.com. For Keith, for Rob Weinberg, I'm Gary Byron. Thank you so much for listening to Mortgage Matters Radio Show and the Connecticut Real Estate Edge podcast. Until next Saturday, have a good one, everybody.